Hey, Cam followers, it is Wednesday. This is week 3 of 3 weeks. So if you haven't seen the preceding 2, please do step back and listen to me and Kathy talking about the neuroscience of pain. Tonight, we are going to tackle an angle that a lot of people will go, oh, well, that's common sense. Oh, of course. But often it doesn't feature very much in the way that we create our pain management plans. Fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
So first of all, please meet Kathy. If you haven't met Kathy before, please tell us about yourself, Kathy.
Again?
Again.
Hi, I'm Kathy Murphy. I'm a veterinary surgeon and I am a neuroscientist and I am director of Barking Brains, which is a science communication platform bringing neuroscience information to the training and behaviour community.
Amazing.
And I have an interest in pain because my clinical special interest area is pain, basically. So anesthesia, analgesia, pain, and how to prevent it.
So how have we known each other now? A couple of years?
Yeah. Well, it was AWF, wasn't it? I don't know.
We met over very, very poor quality white wine in the House of Commons, didn't we?
Yeah, it was really bad.
If anybody ever goes to these events and thinks you're going to have the high life, no.
Like it was 1.99, I think.
So we had to just drink a lot more of it and then talk more. And Kathy, just every time I speak to her, blows me away with how you can take something quite complex and put it in. You can respect it, but simplify it. And that's what I love so much. And before we crack on, I want to just blatantly plug our children's illustrated booklet. So if you haven't seen it already, this is called Why Don't You Listen? It is designed to educate children about how to manage themselves, their behavior, their movement, their posture, what they do in and around a dog that's potentially painful. Now, it's actually cleverer than that, though, because the idea is that parents will read it to their children and we will get both educated. Both parent and child will therefore understand their dog better. So why don't you listen? All the funds go back into supporting Cam. You can buy singly, you can buy it in bulk. Please support Cam. This is a real financial pillar for us to keep going. Thank you. I'll put a link, or one of the lovely Cam ambassadors will put a link for me. So back to the amazing Kathy.
Well, just to pick up on that, I've been thinking this week about why it is that we have that paper from the beginning of 2020, which was multi-center, indicating that up to 80% of a behaviourist caseload are pain-related. 80% of a behaviourist caseload are pain-related. I'll say it twice for effect. That's a huge proportion of behaviour cases that are actually related to pain. And I was thinking that after getting some feedback from kind of talking to people about, are they interested in pain? Are they interested in learning more about it from the behaviour aspect? And I think it is that, like, as a society, we kind of default to, well, that's the vet's job. But as we spoke about in the last 2 lives, it's actually really difficult for the vet to be able to assess pain in a 10-minute consult where the dog is in an unfamiliar environment, where both the owner and the dog are at least aroused, if not stressed, and certainly full of more adrenaline than they would be when they're relaxing. We're asking the vets to do something that's virtually impossible, as well as the fact that you only take your dog to the vet to ask them to examine it for pain when there's something so wrong that it's really obvious and it's really bothering the animal or interfering with your quality of life, i.e. behavior issues like aggression, etc. So we're actually only presenting the animals to the vet for pain examination under those circumstances usually, and even then it's difficult for the vets to be able to detect pain. So I think things like your book are just so crucial, because even though we may think that we're good at spotting pain, we are not. Yeah. And even though we may think that it's an easy fix to take it to the vets, and if the vet says it's not in pain, then it's fine, that isn't the case.
It's not. Yeah. And also, another really simple, because I'm simpler than you, we can't stop pain in its entirety. So when we take our dog to the vet and say, hey, we've got them on a pain protocol, that doesn't mean that all pain is gone. And it doesn't mean that learnt associations have gone. So in my mind, any dog, for any reason that is having pain, a painful procedure or a painful disease, and there are children in that house, that book. And I really, really want a drug company to go, we love it, and we're going to give it with every single prescription, no matter what it was, acute or chronic pain. Because
definitely.
I just think, so I had something called supraspinatus tendinopathy, which is, it basically feels like someone's putting a dagger through your shoulder intermittently, but then there's a slow kind of like throb at other times. And then when you're asleep, you might roll over and wake yourself up suddenly. And I had that for about 6 months. And my mood was so up and down. I tried to be like, hey, happy Hannah, but it just grinds you down. And I would be a bit, but no one was going to put me to sleep because I'd be a little bit stroppy. Well, I hope they wouldn't. But
and also you're verbal most of the time when you're not blind drunk, you're verbal. So we can ask you whether you're in pain or not. But if you think about our dogs, we can only ever recognize pain in them when it's agony, because we can't ask them, how are you feeling? Are you painful? If they're painful enough to be lame, we can spot something. But we all know people with bad backs who aren't lame. We all know people with dental pain who aren't lame, with ligament pain that aren't lame. We know athletes that compete at a very high level that have pain that aren't lame. So it's a very blunt tool for being able to decide whether an animal is in pain or not. So, I really do think education is the key. And if we can bring up the next generation to be more mindful for looking for those subtle behavior changes and understanding that pain may be underlying them. And as the Mills paper suggests, in up to 80% of behavior cases, whether that is aggression, whether it's separation anxiety, whether it's general anxiety disorder, there are lots of ways that it can affect mood. Then I think the quality of our dogs' lives will be protected in a way that it isn't at the moment.
No. And this is the truth, through my 20 years as a vet, the amount of dogs that have been brought in to be euthanized because their behavior is now considered so unpredictable, or the family have lost faith, or the family have a young child or an older person that they know that they can't protect from accidentally being near that dog at that moment. And I just think it's actually really, really common. But also because I'm so dog centric. So I'm dog centric, owner centric, and then vet centric. I think that's my importance scale.
Yeah.
You know how dogs look at our faces and they watch to see us smile. They take so much from our facial expressions, our posture. They try and read who we are, what are we doing, what do you think at the moment? We can do it back. You can watch, you can learn so much from what your dog is thinking and how they are, but we just don't seem to give them the time. Which I think
it's kind of bizarre, isn't it? Did you see the news article about the dog in Russia that's had 4 prosthetic limbs? And when you look at the photo that's in the media coverage and when you watch the video, my heart breaks. I actually sobbed when I watched the video, because as a clinician who has a special interest in pain, I just see a dog that is in absolute crippling agony. And yet the media see that as a huge success because it's up on 4 prosthetic limbs walking, and walking is considered to be the success metric. There's something very wrong that we're not able as an empathic species to be able to look at that dog's face in pictures and look at the video and the body posture and see those signs of pain. I think education is key, because I think people, it's not because people are cruel. It's not because people don't care that the dog's in pain. It's that people genuinely don't see it. They're genuinely not seeing it. And, the facial grimace is there, the ear position is low, the orbital fissures are decreased, all of the classic facial grimace signs of pain, as well as body posture changes. But people just aren't seeing it. And I think that can be what it's like living with our dogs, is that, we're blinded to it to some extent.
No, absolutely. Something about 2 or 3 years ago, they did London Metro did a piece on dancers and their dogs. So there was ballet dancers and ballroom dancers, and they took these amazing photos of these dancers doing incredible stuff with their dog in the photo. And there was, out of say 10 photos, I'd say at least 4 of them, the dog had postures that really indicated physical disability. So really lordotic, they had really kind of morphological changes that suggested compensation. You sit there going, is the hypocrisy of looking at a beautiful dancer and having a dog in the photo going,
yeah,
oh, beautiful, and you're like, no, it's not. But anyway, we digress.
Indeed. Should we get to some neurobiology?
Yes, because last time we went over massively.
So why don't we just delve into a little bit of neurobiology in the brain? So why is that you might feel grumpy when you've got pain, for instance, which is a pretty classical presentation, I think. So you've got different areas in the brain that are responsible for different jobs, if you like. So we've gone over this in previous lives before, but you've got the prefrontal cortex that sits at the front of the brain. Some neuroscientists would argue that dogs don't have prefrontal cortices, but in that case, we can just refer to it as the frontal cortex, because dogs definitely have frontal cortices. But essentially, that part of the brain, whether you're a dog or a human, is kind of responsible for decision making and kind of overriding emotional responses to make sure that the emotional response is appropriate. So, kind of deciding how to manage situations. You've also got the amygdala, which is a brain area in the middle of the brain that is highly connected to other brain areas and is really the center of emotionality, if you like. It's not the only brain area that is involved and necessary for emotionality, but it's a really key brain area for that. And those two brain areas talk to each other all the time. It's probably the greatest shuttle of information in a still non-moving animal, because in a moving animal, obviously, you've got the motor cortex. But between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, you've got this constant communication. And that's incredibly important, because that's how we constantly make sure that our emotions are fit for purpose, that they are serving a purpose, that they're appropriate for the situation, and that they're proportional for the situation. And that that we can change our emotions depending on the information that's coming in. So we can kind of assimilate new information. So you might find something upsetting at first, but then someone says, oh, there, don't worry, it's all going to be fine. Look, it's not even made a mark on you. And your emotion will change and modify in response to that new information. What's really interesting is that actually with pain, there are lots of downstream effects. And what I mean by that is pain isn't just about the unpleasant sensation. It's not just about the unpleasant experience, but there are also physiological effects of pain. So one of them is that you stop producing as much melatonin. And melatonin is a hormone that's essential for keeping you asleep during your sleep cycle. So otherwise you tend to be on a kind of 90-minute cycle where you would naturally wake up and you would have to go back to sleep, and then you would naturally wake up and you would have to go back to sleep. But having the right level of melatonin gives you an undisturbed period of sleep that is needed so that you can replenish, so that you can consolidate all of the memories of everything that you did that day, but so that you can replenish all of the goodness that your brain and body need to be able to function. And kind of do all the repair. So repair all the neurons that may have been damaged that day, or repair other parts of the body, etc. So melatonin is decreased when you're in pain. And what that means is that leads to more disturbed sleep. And this can be really difficult for owners to pick up on, because the dog may actually look like it sleeps for longer, in that it may spend more time in a sleeping position in a bed, like more hours per day in a sleeping position in a bed. But what you will only notice if you keep a camera on that dog or you observe that dog very closely is that that sleep is disturbed. So it's not all perfectly undisturbed sleep, but it goes through those fluctuations. So there are periods where the dog's awake and then it goes back to sleep. So i.e. its eyes open and it shuffles around and then it goes back to sleep. And that disturbed sleep is associated with an increased risk of aggression and also irritation, irritability. And we'll come on to explain how that fits in with what I was just talking about the communication between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala in a minute. Another effect is that pain leads to a decrease in tryptophan and conversion into serotonin. And we know that serotonin is an essential neurotransmitter for mood. So it's, if you like, the happy neurotransmitter is how the media portray it. It's not quite that simple, but it is. It's one of the neurotransmitters that's very heavily involved in mood and in overall, not in all brain areas, but overall, decreased tryptophan and decreased serotonin is expected to lead to low mood. And low mood is associated with increased irritability. So you've got this kind of change that is also confounding the other change, the decrease in melatonin. And the third factor I want to talk about is that with pain, you get an increase in inflammatory cytokines. And that isn't just inflammatory cytokines that are essential to try and repair the physical damage that's causing the pain. That's the way we classically think about inflammation, is that, you know, the damage produces inflammatory cytokines and they're essential for repair of that area. So let's say it's an arthritic joint, for repair of that arthritic joint. But actually inflammatory cytokines have a direct effect on both cognition and emotionality and mood. So if we try and tie all of those things together with the brain areas that we were talking about, disturbed sleep and low serotonin both decrease the communication between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So what that means is that when you're irritable, so when something irritates you, instead of you having enough communication between those two brain areas for the prefrontal cortex to say, whoa, hang on a minute, that's not quite the situation. Like literally all you've done is brushed up against someone. You don't have to be that annoyed by it, just be mildly annoyed by it. The prefrontal cortex isn't able to do that because it's not getting enough information from the amygdala, and the amygdala is not getting enough information to modify its emotional response based on what the prefrontal cortex is telling it. So you've got that decreased coupling, we call it. So another way of thinking about it is decreased synchrony. You know, in an orchestra or symphony, you have synchrony of all the instruments. And when they're all in time, it sounds beautiful and it works well. And when they're not in time, it sounds like a complete car crash. So essentially, you've still got the instruments, you've still got the amygdala, and you've still got the prefrontal cortex, but they're not synchronous. They're not in time with each other. So you're not getting the beautiful symphony, you're getting a car crash noise, which can mean that you end up with disproportional responses, so excessive aggression or excessive irritation. Now, the other brain area, if your brains haven't exploded already, to bring in is the striatum. And the striatum is a really interesting brain area because what the striatum is responsible for is that modulation. So separately to both the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, sitting separately but in between the two, if you like, is the striatum. And the striatum decides how much to modulate the emotional response. So if it's going to decrease the aggressive response or the irritability, how much should I do that? And also, how quickly should I do that? So that's really essential for, again, ensuring what we were saying is the main aim, which is making sure that our responses are proportional and appropriate, or appropriate and proportional. And low serotonin and inflammatory cytokines, specific inflammatory cytokines, so three specific inflammatory cytokines that are very commonly elevated in most types of pain, actually alter modulation within the striatum. So they prevent the striatum from being able to do its job of modulation. So that's why pain is associated with mood disturbances. And that's why you're more likely to be irritable. That's why you see aggression. And ultimately, when those two are not in play, that's why you can see depressive type mood changes.
Amazing. So we're working in a flow where the pain is affecting emotion. Can we reverse this? Because we're only going to talk for 25 minutes this time. And what these lives are trying to do is inspire people to look at the problem in hand differently.
Yeah.
So knowing it going that way, can we flip?
Yeah, we can, absolutely. And that's a little bit of what we talked about last time, is that there is an increasing body of evidence showing this in animal models as well as in human clinical patients. That actually what we call affective state, which is known as kind of how you feel at that time, your well-being, your mood, it incorporates your mood, your emotions, etc. Mood is a way of describing long-term steady state emotions. So emotions would classically be considered in the moment. So I could, find something you did irritating and be really angry with you. But if I was angry all the time, then angry would be my mood. It wouldn't just be an emotion. So what's really interesting and what it enables us to kind of use this information to hijack those pathways for better well-being is that by focusing on activities that improve mood, decrease irritation, remove any triggers for aggression, you can actually have a positive effect on pain processing, i.e. the brain will spend less time processing those pain signals and amplify them less so that they're not experienced as intensely if you engage in activities that modify mood.
So is that like just a direct distraction, or is it going to be increasing the endogenous serotonin and
both? Yes. Yeah, so you've got immediate effects, which are distraction, and distraction can be both good and bad. Distraction can be bad if it's going to lead to more physical trauma and therefore more pain later on. But you can definitely use distraction in the moment for good. So that's what we classically use when kids fall over, right? They fall over, they graze their knee, they're about to kick off and have a meltdown, and you distract them with, oh, there, never mind, it's all fine, pick them up and let's put them on the swing and get going again. Now that's a neurobiological effect, which is that you're engaging the brain in something immediately that is intense enough that the brain will switch its attention from processing the pain signals. The pain will still be there, it's just that the signals won't be processed in the same way in the brain, so you won't experience that pain, you won't be aware of that pain. And your brain will then spend its energy processing the signals to do with sitting on the swing and whatever mummy's doing, kissing the knee and rubbing, etc. So distraction in the moment is really good, and we can use that for our animals also. When our animals have falls, it's great to be able to jump in there, get them up and kind of, distract them with another activity or, some food enrichment or whatever. But what we're talking about here is not just hijacking those that pain processing in the moment with distraction, but actually leading to lasting change. Because what you see when you're regularly engaging in those activities, and that could be some of the animal research, for instance, looked at changing the way that animals were handled. So just simply by changing the way that they're handled, or by changing their exposure to emotional triggers, you get long-term changes in serotonin levels, in inflammatory cytokine levels. Inflammatory cytokines are always flowing around our blood. So what really makes a difference to cognition and emotion is what the balance of various cytokines is, and what that background level is on a day-to-day basis. And you can influence that by regular engagement in activities.
So this is all common sense. Like most of the people that follow CAM are going to be, I'd say, middle-aged to older. That's our kind of area. And we've all suffered pain. Many of us might even have chronic pain conditions ourselves. And we know that if you've had a great day with your mates and you've had a glass of wine and you're having a cool laugh, you don't really acknowledge your pain. It's not that it's gone. And it's kind of like, it's so close in our ability to understand it. We need to learn how to extrapolate it into animals, because it's not,
and I think historically we've done ourselves a disservice, because if you look 30 odd years ago, we were still making fun of people who thought that they could change their pain levels with mood. Yeah. You know, we'd say, oh, don't be ridiculous. Like, the pain's obviously still there. Yeah. Because we just didn't understand the neurobiology. But in the neuroscience research now is phenomenal. And just in the last 20 years, we've learned so much more about pain processing, that we're really now starting to focus on the influence of cognition and mood for the management of pain, and realizing that that is as important, in some cases, if not more important, than simply focusing on the pain itself.
Yeah, and it's like the human brain is capable of creating its own balanced cocktails, whereas when we start using medication, do we know how much to give, in what order, at what frequency, to not tip all the balance the other way? So it makes a lot of sense for us to use our endogenous capabilities as a priority. And we do that in human. As you say, we've got, I know if somebody has chronic pain, they like to say, well, look, get a hobby that's less impactful, but it's still engaging, get out, meet your friends, all of these sort of things. But it's less talked about in veterinary. I was laughing. I went on a brilliant course this weekend, guys. Sam Lindley, Longview, really, really amazing lady. Huge respect for her. And she was laughing because I often feel that I'm labelled wishy-washy.
So, are you?
Well, because the advice that can
be wishy-washy.
The rugs and, licky mats and snuffle mats.
Oh my God, no, there's so much evidence-based medicine on this site, way more than you get at vet schools. I'm sorry for the vet schools out there. But yes, it's phenomenally evidence-based.
It is, yeah, exactly. But I think people still see it's a bit like the sprinkles on the top of the cake. It's not a necessity. It's only if you've got time or.
Oh my goodness, yeah, because pain isn't that important, right? I mean, it's literally the most important thing in well-being.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The only reason we worry about surgery, not surgery related to arthritis, but just surgery generally, like neutering or anything like that, is because it induces pain and distress. And distress primarily through the pain. So yeah, I mean, we can't not focus on it.
In many ways, it's kind of strange how much we deal with pain in a vet practice. Like, I listed at the average day of a vet and all of the things that we see, and I'd say 85% of what's brought to us has a pain. It's dramatic. So it's quite unidimensional that we tend to be only dispensing pharmaceuticals when we have so many other things that we could offer, but they're quite time expensive.
Definitely. Yeah, you can't do them in a 10-minute consult. And I think some vets try, but it is really difficult. I mean, that's why your resource is really good, because vets can signpost to it, and you've got a lot of really good resources available for owners.
Oh, thanks, mate. That's so nice.
Well, I thought I'd big you up for once, because you're always bigging me up.
I know, thanks, but I'll get the wine next time, shall I?
Yeah, I'm not drinking at the moment, so.
Oh, good for you. Well done. I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's only till Friday, so.
Oh, okay. Thinking you were going to be like, holier than thou. Cool. Well, I think we've done pretty well today with 28 minutes. Not bad for us.
Nice.
The reason that we're doing these chats is many. I really want people to just be passionate about pain, see how exciting is it, see how much more we can do for it. I'd love everybody to meet Kathy, because her brain is just incredible. And also, me and Kathy and a lovely lady called Bobby are doing a deep dive soon, and called Moose's Story, and it's more content along these lines, and we're hoping that you guys will be tantalized, ready to come and join us. And we'll put the details in the thread, and it's also in the description. It's not long now. It's the 5th.
It's not long, no. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be such an amazing day. I think because it is the most important subject, and we'll be talking about the neurobiological mechanisms, specifically relating that to behavior and behavior cases, and making it practical so that you come away with tools that you can implement immediately, whether you have dogs that are in pain or not, because if they're not in pain now, they will be at some point in their life. So actually getting this knowledge now helps you stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what's really important to all three of us, is that it's lovely going to CPD and being wowed, but let's all be honest, most of us, it falls out of our brain on the drive home and we never get to put it into practice. So what we really want to do is give people tools that they can start using immediately. That's really, really important for us.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you very much, guys, for listening. We're going to behave ourselves this week and we're going to go and see you hopefully on the 5th of December. I have got the amazing Nada Robinson joining me tomorrow night at 7. So we're going to be talking about laser and LED and what is fact and what is fiction and how and where they fit into a chronic pain management plan. So please do join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Until then, see you later.